Hello and welcome. My name's Andy Crook, and my mission is to help garage owners become more successful in business. How do I do that? I go live most weeks on a topic from one of the 5 pillars of business as I see it. And today, we're in the financial pillar, and we're talking about return on investment, or ROI. You've probably all seen the ads. They read a bit like this: add an MOT bay from only £15 a day. It sounds irresistible, because per day feels like coffee and a sandwich decision. So we need to get real. If an MOT-based setup costs, let's say, £30,000 spread over 5 years or 60 months, that ad divides it by 30 days a month. So that's 30,000 divided by 60 times by 30 comes out at around about £16 per day. It's £16.70. And that's exactly how they sell it to you. Only £16.70 a day. Could go wrong? Well, loads. Because that number quietly ignores the hidden costs that come with any equipment purchase. Things like training and competency, maintenance, calibration, breakdowns, admin, compliance, the lost efficiency while you install it and do the groundworks. And for me, the big one, the opportunity cost. What you had to stop doing to make space and time for the new thing. You probably know you should do a cost analysis before you buy anything to figure out the return on investment and break-even point. But are you considering everything? So let's dive into return on investment. And let's use a realistic example, an MOT bay being installed in an established 3-bay garage. Because most garage owners only ask, will it pay for itself? Which in my opinion is the wrong question. I think the real question is it better than selling more of what you already do, but doing it better? Because that's the atomic success way. That's the atomic success MBA. More, better, before additional. And today I'm going to give you the numbers so that you can stop lying to yourself. And we're going to use the example of MOT Martin and his magical license. And MOT Martin thinks, a bit like lots of people I speak to, if only I had an MOT bay, I'd never be quiet. And while he might never be quiet, he might still be skint. Because an MOT bay doesn't automatically create profit. An MOT bay creates traffic. Profit only happens if the MOTs cover what you sacrificed, and you can convert fails into paid work without wrecking flow. So let's build baseline. What you're giving up right now. So Martin owns a 3-bay garage and is giving up 1 bay, currently runs at 45% efficiency. That is, he sells 45% of the hours available in that bay each day. So he sells around about 3.6 hours a day. His labor rate is £70 an hour. So he's losing £252 a day in labor sales. Now the bit that most people forget, the parts profit. So parts gross profit needs to be added to those hours. If Martin sells 90 to 100% of the labor value in parts per hour with a 25 to 33% margin, that's margin, not market mind. So what would that result in terms of part sales from his bay from that day? So 252 times 1.9 to 1.2 is between 227 and £302 a day. So let's take that to what the profit is from that. So we take the lower end of the estimate, 25% margin. That's £56.75 a day. We take the higher end of the estimate. That's £99 per day. So the bay that you're giving up is already producing £252 per day in labour sales and somewhere between £57 and £100 a day in parts gross profit. So let's round it up. It's somewhere between £309 and £352 per day. What would be the MOT income? Well, the maximum class 4 MOT fee is for £54.85. Now remember, the ad said £16.70 per day. But remember, that's only the headline payment logic. We must include at least 10% repairs and maintenance and payments over 5 years. So the simple way to model it is the MOT bay cost is 30. Add 10% allowance for the R&M burden, 33. Spread over 5 years, it's actually closer to £25 per day. And on top of that, MOT work has some, all garage work has some drag. MOT work has some specific drag. Admin, compliance, the retests. So we'll apply a 10% haircut on the MOT fee as a usable contribution. So 54.85 times by 0.9 equals 49.37. That's how much usable income comes per MOT. So the real return on investment calculation, or what you should be considering, is how many MOTs would you need to do per day just to stand still? Because your target per day isn't £16. It's the target is what you gave up plus the daily payment burden. So if we take the low target, £309 plus the £25 per day, your daily target is £333 per day. And the high target is £377 per day, divided by 49.37 per MOT. And it's somewhere between 6.5 and 7.5 MOTs per day. So let's call it what it is. You need between 7 and 8 MOTs just to stand still. That's not to grow. That's not to get rich. That's just to be not any worse off than you already were. 7 to 8 MOTs per day just to stand still. And what happens now, nearly every time I go through this with somebody, is I always get the argument that everyone says to me when we talk about this, and they use it to justify the decision. Yeah, but the failures will make up for it. Okay, so let's go there. The national fail rate, according to the DVSA's published MOT results, show an initial fail rate of around about 26.8% for class 3 and 4 in their very latest data set. So Martin expects that 4 out of 5 failures will get repaired at his place. That's a decent 80% retention of his MOT work. So repairs created per MOT is 0.268 times by 0.8, which equals 0.214 repairs for every MOT. So a little under a quarter of repairs MOT. So you'll get a repair on around about 1 in 4. MOT Martin has some data on his average fail repair labour. Okay, so when he sends the vehicles that he sends away for MOT at the moment and they come back for repair, he estimates the average MOT repair labour is about 2 hours. So the shop hours created per MOT is simply 0.214 times 2, which equals 0.428 labour hours per every MOT. So if you're doing 7 to 8 MOTs a day just to stand still, the labour implication from those MOTs is somewhere between 3 and 3.5 hours per day. So yes, the failures can create a big chunk of labour. Now, add parts, because we did that before, and that's where lots of garages, that's where they make any profit. So labour sales from fails repairs, somewhere between 3 and 3.5 hours a day times £70 is going to be somewhere between £210 and £240 a day. The parts sales on that labour, using the same ratio as before, 90 to 100%, is somewhere between £189 and £286 every day. If we add that gross profit margin on that, with somewhere between 25 and 33% margin, that's 47 to 94 per day. So the MOT fails can absolutely create meaningful profit within the business. But here's the kicker. Can you actually cope with the extra work? because those failures don't arrive politely. They arrive as time-sensitive emergencies. Can you do it today? And before they ask that, they require authorization calls. They need the jobs pricing up, estimates produced, and then need to order the parts. Is there any parts delays? That results in tech interruptions, resulting in reshuffling your diary. And plus there's all those retests. Oh yeah, and sometimes the customers are waiting. So even if the numbers look good, if you don't have the systems, the MOT bay becomes a chaos generator. And this is where it bites hard. So before you consider additional, you ought to think about doing more, better. Because an MOT bay doesn't fix a weak workshop. It breaks it. The more better comparison, the bit that should make you feel a little bit uncomfortable, is if you're only at 45% efficiency, as MOT Martin was, here's the question. Do I really need an MOT bay? Or do I need to sell more of my core? Do I need to sell more of what I do best? Because a small improvement in utilization often beats the early stage ROI of doing something additional, especially an MOT bay. So for example, if Martin increased the amount of hours sold a day just by 0.8 hours, taking his bay from 3.6 to 4.4 hours a day at £70 an hour, he would increase the income by £56 per day in labour sales. And that's before the parts margin stacks up on top. That's basically the usable contribution of one extra MOT per day without buying anything. So if your business is currently leaking time, estimates, conversion, and workflow, you don't need an MOT bay. You need to do more, better. So here's a quick reminder of the 3Ds decision tool. If you can't remember the 3Ds, it's do, defer, delete. And that's what you need to decide in 10 seconds when you look at something like this. So if you're considering an MOT bay or anything additional in your workshop, before you decide to do it, remember, only do it if you can truthfully say you already have the equivalent demand to the opportunity cost. You have enough capacity in the remaining bays to absorb the extra labor that will be created by the additional thing. So with an MOT bay, that could be 3 to 4 hours of labor a day, fail work that needs to be done when it lands. If not, defer it. If the real issue is your bays are underutilized, your estimate follow-up is weak, MOT demand is less than the opportunity cost, or your workflow is messy, then you must defer. Because your fastest return on investment is usually more sold hours, a better margin with better systems, before you add a whole new regulated workflow. And finally, delete it if it's mainly ego, fantasy, or a rescue plan for a business that isn't profitable. Because an MOT bay isn't a rescue plan. It's nearly always an expansion route. So the key takeaway is simple. Don't let anyone sell you an MOT bay as only costing from £15 a day, because that's not the basis for return on investment calculations. Return on investment isn't only payback. It's also considering, what will this replace? What will it cost in the real world? And is it better than doing more of your core better? Because that's how you stop being busy and broke and start being stable. Remember, if you should, you must. And what's stopping you is probably starting. See you next time.